Hi, good afternoon to everyone in the room. My name is Dr. Akeem Stewart. A pleasure to have you all with us today on Coping in Color, Navigating Black Mental Health. And today we have the pleasure to have a very esteemed guest, Khadijah Abdul-Gafoor. And Khadijah is a distinguished public speaker, policy advisor, and dedicated advocate committing to improving the lives of marginalized youth. As a devoted mother of six exceptional children, Khadijah's personal journey profoundly shapes her personal work in mental health, substance abuse prevention, youth incarceration, autism, and early childhood intervention. Khadijah's story is one of resilience and perseverance. Facing significant challenges throughout her life, she has persevered to a point where she has attained a bachelor's and honors degree in English from York University, simultaneously pursuing two full-time professional programs, becoming a registered early childhood educator and an inclusive resource consultant. Her journey has been marked profound by profound personal and familial challenges, including advocating for a child who battled rare encephalitis, which led to learning difficulties, epilepsy, and cerebral palsy. Khadijah's recent advocacy has been driven by her youngest child's autism diagnosis, leading her to address critical disparities in access to resources and early interventions for Black children. Khadijah's contributions extend to policy, reform, and public advocacy, where she has played a pivotal role in shaping policies related to youth incarceration, focusing on ensuring fair treatment and rehabilitation opportunities for young people rather than punitive measures. Her recent academic work, including the journal article Family Reflections: My Son's Perspective on His Experiences Incarcerated as a Youth with a Chronic Disease, published by Pediatric Research in 2024, reflects her commitment to using lived experience as a tool for social justice. As a sought after speaker, Khadijah addresses diverse audiences with heartfelt authenticity and evidence based solutions. Her engagements include campaigns such as No One Left Behind, which is Center for Addiction and Mental Health, where she represents the voices of those with untold stories of substance abuse and mental health challenges. Khadijah continues to be a leading voice in her field, driving meaningful change and advocating for a brighter future for marginalized youth in various capacities across the country. Good morning, Khadijah, and a pleasure to have you.
Oh, good afternoon, Dr. Stewart.
Good afternoon. Yes, I realize I've been pretty happy today, so I think time is moving a lot slowly for me than one would think. But thank you for joining us today. Um, your biography is extensive and very impressive, to say the least. And I've seen that you've gone through, as I would have mentioned, your story is one of resilience and perseverance. Could you give me a little bit more insight to your history and what brought you to the person that you are today?
Well, first and foremost, I can hear an echo.
Mm,
So maybe, Princess, can you try to get rid of the echo? Okay, let's try now. Doctor, can you hear the echo?
no, I don't have Echo Man.
Okay, so then maybe I'll just go ahead then. All right. So first and foremost, thank you for having me. Second, I don't know about the extensive and all of that work. I mean, I think it's important to highlight individuals' achievements and kind of their work wholly and solely for me for one purpose, not for ego. I mean, not for necessarily branding and, to big up oneself, but
Mhm.
really and truly, I think it's good for other people who are out there listening to understand what other people are striving for and what they're doing, right? Because sometimes we're out there and when we see a face that looks like our own, we kind of want to know more. And it's like, okay, that person's lived experience reminds me of my lived experience. Thus, if they get a chronological order or they get sort of like a resume of what somebody else is doing, that can like spawn them to say, you know what, if that person can do it, then maybe I can do it.
Yeah.
So I feel a little bit shy about that beginning there, but I mean that's my reasoning for having it that long. It's just to let people know, hey, I've been there, and if I can do it, then other people can, they can do it as well.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say be shy. Um, I find that our experiences shape us to who we are, regardless of what it is, regardless if it's a walk in the park or through trials and tribulations. Own that, because that you would not be the tenacious person you are today, right, without that lived experience that you want to show people that you have. So you living within that and say, you know what, this is my story and this is what I can become. And with that being said, like, your story, it's very, very, as you say, it's not much, but it is, right? And it shows just true resilience in a world today that is very hard for people like us to be able to establish what we need to establish, and to get the correct lens of equity shown towards us, right? Just from just being or
Hmm.
existing, right? And you have had a lot of experience now with you, as you would have mentioned when we previously spoke, with your youngest and their diagnosis in autism, and then with the journal, the article that you have produced with due to the reflections, family reflections of your son's perspective on his experiences. It gives you a broad an idea of what it is, what is substance abuse, and then what is mental health, and not only just the afflictions of the day to day, but the afflictions that could be medically seen. And I know personally that you work with families within that sector. So could you give me an idea of like how is it working with families who have to deal with one end of what it is mental health, to be a chronological from your experience, and being it to be a diagnosis, and then the affliction of what it is to deal with mental health through substance abuse, and in a system where there's not much reprieve for persons that look like us.
Yeah, thank you, doctor. I appreciate that take on the first part. I mean, we wouldn't even have enough time to scratch the surface. The little bit that I can say is that it's devastating for any parent to have a child or have a loved one that has a substance abuse issue, if we're just dealing with substance abuse. Um, and then it's also equally devastating and challenging to have somebody that has mental health challenges, mental health concerns. But it's astronomically more challenging and becomes a, I mean, to the highest level of trial and tribulation to have the two meet in the middle, which is having individuals that have a substance abuse, an opioid disorder, and have a mental health disorder. It could be alcohol, whatever it is that somebody's suffering from on an addiction basis, let alone it be a child. So my focus has been shedding light on parents and families and guardians and loved ones who have children, who have young children that that have been afflicted with substance abuse issues, and it's not something that's talked about. It's something that's, I think, I mean, God bless CAMH, and I'll talk about them throughout this conversation, where they're highlighting children that have an opioid disorder or have some sort of substance abuse and mental health disorder, because we've been focusing so much on adults that we've kind of pushed the children to the wayside. Now, the pandemic hit, and there's a lot of good and there's a lot of bad, or if we use colloquially these terms, that came out of the pandemic,
Mhm.
which was that we seen that children suffered greatly with mental health and addiction concerns during the pandemic. So that brought a lot of things to the light, and a lot of, you go into the doctor's office now, you go into social services, and you're seeing a lot more, not too much more, but a lot more attention placed on that. So I think it was a perfect opportunity to recommend to CAMH, hey, why don't we talk about children and families that have 10 and 12 and 14 and 16. And I'm going higher and higher because 16, 17, 18 in society is still considered a child,
Mhm.
whether, whatever it is you feel, We're talking about politically, we're talking about what's on the record. These are still children. And having these conversations about youth who are incarcerated, who are under the age of 18, having these conversations about youth that have mental health and have addiction issues, we need to recognize it as such. They're children. They're youth, but they're also children. So this is a conversation that I think that is super important. I've struggled with it for a long time. Not just me, my family has struggled with it, the people around me. Um, I mean, and having multiple children with multiple diagnoses obviously is not something that's easy, but I'm not the only one. So to be able to navigate the mental health services and to be able to navigate medically, I can say it's been challenging, but I said, you know what, to myself, I made my kids. I have to take care of my kids and I have to do the best with my ability to be able to support them with the resources. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. One, because I'm a human, I'm a person with feelings, and I'm only one person,
mm,
and I have to also look about my mental health and my medical, situation, and making sure that I'm good and the people around me. But also, the system is not designed. It wasn't set up. It's a Eurocentric system, as all of us know, and we're not going to get into too much of that because we don't want to be repetitive. But it's a fact. So if you're not European, you're not from the Eurocentric theology, then you're going to have difficulty navigating this, navigating in society. So I think that there's still challenges. I think that there's a lot of good things that are happening, and I've
mm,
been able to tap into some of those resources and get some really good advice, help, real tangible help, like literally a bed for my child who has a substance abuse concern and has an opioid disorder. And I've been able to navigate the system. And now I'm starting to branch into obviously the neurodiversity with a son that's level 3, has a level 3 autism diagnosis, and I'm navigating it just the same way. But obviously, there's challenges on that end as well, so we can discuss that. But it's multifaceted, to be
mm.
very honest.
And yes, personally, I've seen some of those gaps that exist within the health system. Unfortunately, it does go from preventative to public to curative. All across the board, the inequities do exist, and it does help when you do get that reassurance, so you see people that can show you the pathway to help you step along and more or less navigate the red tape that does exist for something that should be pretty much straightforward. When you look at the ideas of equity, people, the formula is so simple,
Yeah.
but when you try to plug it in, you just constantly get pushed back, and
Mhm.
there's no give or no reprieve, and there's nothing for us. But when you do find that lane, it's so enlightening to know like there's a possibility. There are some people out there that are actually working to help us to get to the point that where all we want is an equal chance. And when I say equal, I'm not just saying equality, because equality to me is telling me like if you invite me to drink from the tap of water, but you never put a water source to it. Like you give me the facade that I have it, but really and truly, you're just appeasing to make it look like it. But equity will make sure that I would get the same standard of water that you're getting from your faucet as well.
Yeah.
So with that being said, when you work with these families and having an idea of how to more or less try to navigate within the system itself, what is your approach going to them? Because I know when you deal with persons who have been damaged and hurt by a system, right, that you think that's going to help them, they lose confidence in what help looks like, right?
Mhm.
And they're very haphazard when it comes to, okay, maybe should I take it, maybe should I not. So how do you navigate that bridge as well, being able to help these families to then navigate within the system?
Well, I think, doctor, that it's twofold. I believe that there's accountability on our government and in society to provide resources, um, and they should be held accountable. And is it lacking? It's lacking.
Mhm,
But I also think that when the resources are there, when they are there at your hand reach or they are provided, I think the other part of it is that families that have trauma, right?
mhm,
And families that are going through a lot, families that are dealing with cultural nuances, families that are dealing with stigma and taboo. Now, we're going to say that separate from the accountability of society, right? We're
Mm,
talking about just the home in itself, the backyard, people's personal lives. I think that times that also stops people from getting the help that they do need when it does exist. I've been a proponent of accountability, personal accountability, because you can have the resources there, but if your mental is not right and
mhm,
you're not physically able to get up or mentally able to get up to go and access those things or find out about those things, then you're stuck and you're not able to do anything for yourself or for your loved ones. So I think that's really important for me to mention that for me personally, it's an active decision and participation to say, you know what, I understand what society's dealing with. I understand that there's barriers. I understand that we're disenfranchised and all the words that we use, the big ones and the small ones, right? We go on the protest block, we go in front of Queen's Park, we go here, there, Black Lives Matter. We say a bunch of stuff, right? And all of it is valid. But at the same time, who's looking back at you when you're looking in the mirror? What am I doing?
mm,
So for me, first and foremost is me saying, okay, here's my situation. And I'm an early childhood interventionist by profession.
mhm,
So that means that I go into the homes of families that have children that have developmental delays, one or more delay in their development. That can range from Down syndrome, prematurity, autism, rare conditions, and we go into the homes and we support the families. And the message that I have for myself is the same thing that I transcend into my job. You look at the individual and you have a conversation with them, and then you see where they're at. Because again, I can give you a million resources, right? But if you're not ready to get up and to take accountability or say, you know what, how am I going to get myself up to go to this appointment? How am I going to get myself up to grab my phone to send that email or to do that intake form? Then it becomes very, very difficult. And then again, we're probably having a conversation about support. We're having a conversation about mental health. And that mental health is in mental health, just everyday mental health, right? If someone is suffering from trauma, if they're suffering from depression, if they're suffering from a loss, if they're suffering from grief, if they're suffering from just not being able to get up, man. Today I heard about, the concept of seasonal depression, all these things that we have that can bog us down and just hold us down. Um, this is something that I feel is super important. So I feel that yes, there are some resources that are out there that we can give to the audience. We can help them, particularly from the Black community, African and Caribbean community that I've used personally.
okay.
But again, having a conversation about taking care of oneself as a guardian, as a parent, as an individual, as a loved one, as a friend, to be able to support others. If you ain't right, you can't be right for anyone else. So that's how I kind of do the approach thing, because I personally think it doesn't work the other way around, because I've seen myself give people resources. I've seen them have it. Literally, it's there. The doctors are willing, to give the, to have a psychiatrist look at them, or to have a psychologist look at them, or the therapy is there. They have insurance. They have all these things. But if they're not able to take care of oneself and to really hold themselves accountable to say, hey, this is what I got to do for my kid or for myself or for my mom, my dad, whoever the loved one is, it's going to be very difficult. And I also think it becomes a little bit easier to point fingers,
Mm,
right? So for me, I'll point fingers. I ain't judging anybody. I'll point fingers, but I really love to point the finger back at myself and hold myself accountable. And then from there, say, okay, if I'm holding you accountable, I'm holding myself accountable. So that's kind of been my approach on how to navigate the multifaceted levels of trials and tribulations that I've been through with my 6 children, and particularly myself, and even the people that I love that are around me. I have multiple people that are in my circle that are suffering, including myself. And then it's like, okay, God gave us an opportunity to get up today. Okay, what are we going to do today? Yesterday's gone. That's in the past. We don't live in the past. We live in the future. And excuse me, well, we live in the present. We don't live in the future. We don't want to live there because that's uncertainty, correct?
mhm,
So we're going to live in the present. What are we going to do today? So that's just kind of like my style, and what I try to encourage my parents and my families. And anytime I speak, I try to have a conversation first and foremost about that. And then from there, if your mental is at a level where you can say, okay, today I'm gonna lick off 1, 2, 3, or
mhm,
ABC,
mhm,
right? Or sometimes you might just say, yo, just A. I can only do A today, or I
mhm,
can only do A this week. That's a part of the battle, and just trying to really chop off, because society, they got us by the neck. They society got us by the neck. The banks got us by the neck.
Ah, yes.
Everybody's got us by the neck, and they just choking. And you got to find a way. Like them. What do those guys do? Those guys who do UFC and they
Oh,
get in that chokehold.
you're
You got to
trying to
find it.
escape.
Yeah, you can't tap out. When you
You
tap
know,
out, that's it. You get them all full power and full range to just really, really take over your life. And I know we used to have this conversation in the past about and it was like a conspiracy theory type thing. Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist or nobody's out to get you. I think a lot of those things have been confirmed now and fact checked that they got us down, man. And we got to be able to make sure that we don't tap out.
that's very true. And I took three main things from that, especially that you said. Well, four actually. The level of accountability is one thing we have to drill within our society. Like, I believe that we have been strategically marginalized for a very long time. And within that, we as a people, we're enough to be able to say, you know what, we don't need the handout. We don't need the woe is me, come help me. If we start to lean on each other and build up from that, we could be able to step forward. But then, as you say, society has us in a chokehold. So it's very hard to think that there would be some type of success when you're still just trying to gasp for air. Every time that you come up for air, you're getting pushed back down, and it's a little bit deeper underwater. And one thing you said too about pointing your fingers, you got to be able to point. You know, when you point fingers, four is going back at you, right? So
Mhm.
you have to understand that you can't just, you got to look at that person in the mirror and say, I need to do better from my standpoint. I need to do better to be able to be better for other people to then see, and then you could start a chain reaction from there. And one thing you said about living in the present, and that's something that I live by as well. That yesterday's defeat is today's lesson, which is tomorrow's victory. So you have to see within every single roadblock, every single obstacle, there's a lesson to be learned. And if that lesson is learned, then see how you could apply that to be better, 1% better the next day. So is, as you would say, getting off seven things this week, or just doing one, but just 1% better. And I think as we tend to try to reach out, so like we see the goal and we try to grasp for the goal before we take two steps, even if it's a crawl, a roll, a drag, just, but you just got to give yourself the grace. And giving grace is something that I have an issue with. I tend to give people grace, but when it comes to myself, I'm very hard on me when it comes, when they say I need to give myself grace. Like, I know I did this much so far, but I'm thinking about, but I didn't do the other thing. Instead of saying no, and in that point and saying, oh, you know what, this is good. I could build on this. And when it comes to different families, I believe when you live in a system where that you don't have technically time for grace, which is insane to think about it, right? You don't have time for grace, where grace is something that is, it's free and it's so easily attainable. It's just from a couple words of affirmation saying, you know, I did well today. Tomorrow is a day that I would try to do a little bit more.
Yeah,
And
if you let me just, and I think I love that point, and because of my old age here, I'm getting up in my age. I'm gonna forget. I think a big part of grace is about our community, particularly. I mean, it can apply to anyone's community, but particularly our community, where we care a lot about what other people think, and we have a lot of responsibilities, and we have a lot of voices in our head. Wow.
mhm,
Especially if from the Caribbean community. I can speak on that because my background is Guyanese. Guys, don't come for me. I know we're in South America. Calm down. I know we're there. Just relax. But we're a part of the Caribbean diaspora. Okay, we're there.
practically speaking, it is Caribbean, so
It
you're
is Caribbean, right? Because I know some people be like, she needs a boat. She's Caribbean. But you know, we're there. Just coming from a Guyanese background, understanding that, man, there's a lot of voices in our head. There's a lot of people in our head. There's a lot of fallacies. There's a lot of truths, untruths, and there's a lot of pressure. So again, we talk about the society's pressure and the chokehold, but to me, it's even greater with the chokehold some of us are getting from our own lives and our
hmm
own family pressure and our own
hmm
understanding of what should be and how we raise our kids. And Do we take care of our parents when we get older? What about my life? What about this? And I mention these things because it comes back down to mental health. And
Mm-hmm.
if we're suffering from mental health, then we know that just knocking at the door, we can potentially have some addiction coming in there.
Yes.
And if we have addictions and we have mental health and we're not addressing it, and we're not, or we're, there's two types of people. Like you have the people who are just pointing and want help. And I won't say handouts because I find that a little demeaning in a way, but their understanding is that society owes them because that's what society's job is to do. That's
Mm-hmm.
what politicians' jobs is to do. They're supposed to help the people. So I'm going to be kind and say that very, very compassionate. And that I think for those people, they don't necessarily only want a handout ideology, but it's like they're supposed to. But then you have people who are like, listen, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
How do I how do I make this system that I know that's not designed for me work in my favor? And it can't work sometimes 100%, and sometimes you can only get some of it. But at the end of the day, really addressing and saying, you know what? Okay, I know what society I deal with.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening at home? Who's in my head? What am I dealing with? And if we're able to kind of parcel out those things, then I think we're much more equipped to be able to go into CAMH, for example, if we need to go to emerge for mental health concerns. I
Mm-hmm.
think we'll be much more better as society to say, you know what, I'm not going to be that old school mentality about therapy. I'm going to go see a psychometrist or a psychologist or a psychiatrist. You know what? I've been suffering for like a good 10, 15 years or 5 years or 6 months. I think I need medication, and that's okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? Again, it's the voices in our head, it's the things that we've been taught and over and over and over. And again, I'm not one to only point at the Eurocentric um, teachings that most of us got within the public school system and just all facets of our life. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm also looking at some of that stuff we brought, man. We brought some of those thinkings, and we can go as deep to say, yeah, well, our parents got it from the British. Okay, we know. We know that we've been, you know, to some degree brainwashed. We know to some degree that we've been lied to. Okay, how do we work this thing out so that we're just able to do what we can do, which is take care of ourselves and our families? And I think if we do that really hard look and get help, because help is okay to
Mm-hmm.
ask for, and to really parcel out what happened from utero, what happened to my parents, what's my grandparents story or my great grandparents story, and really start to put things together.
Mm-hmm.
Or I mean, I'm going off, but why did my dad leave? Why did all these things matter? Why did I end up in the situation I end up in? Because if you don't figure out why you ended up where you ended up, then
Mm-hmm.
you won't be able to take care of those little babies at home or take care of your family that need you or your loved ones. So again, I'm a proponent for getting support and getting help and finding that within our community. We do have some resources, and I'm sure this organization will be able to post some after. If they'd like me to send some, I do have some as well.
And I actually want to tap into some of those resources as we
Sure.
can and in a little bit. But I believe right now we're going to take a short break, and then
Okay.
we could continue this routine discussion. You have my brain just going, and I'm excited. So we take a minute break, and then we get right back to it.
Okay.
Welcome back. Had a nice we had a nice intermission right there. We actually left on a really good point that you did say, and I really did take away from that. Apart from you segueing into talking about all of the different organizations that can help. And one thing just wanted to add to that, with our community, and when we look at the handouts and, as you say, like loosely turn them hands out and us getting it for our own and whatnot, when we really sit down and really think how deep this brainwash that we've had has run, we're talking about cultural colonialism, we're talking about ethnic cleansing. We're speaking about persons who would like to be able to trace their roots back, and it goes as far as a port in one Caribbean country, and you can't tell what was their original tribal name or anything of the sort, and then you just have to live with what has been imposed with you, and it's really hard to see that other persons can or other races can track back their lineage 7, 8 generations before them, and we're practically starting from your great grandfather, maybe, or your grandfather. And many persons don't know in between there. But I do believe within that we have to be able to say help is okay, right? We can step forward and say, you know what, I need to address these issues, because you don't have to be the strongest one in the bunch at all times and think that not expressing it makes you weaker. That expressing those issues make you just as strong. And having the idea, knowing that the concept of family is so important, and how the extended families is so important. And we see it more existing not in the North American aspect, which is very, when you look at the metropolis of what it is to be in North America, it's more like, oh, 18, leave the home, go, and then
Yeah.
you live on your own. And then what is whereas where I grew up, because I'm Barbadian by birthright, so we live in an extended home. The grandmother stays, the great grandmother stays. Everyone takes care of everyone. Your neighbors are your friends, your childhood friends. You grow up, you get up, go next door. The idea of borrowing a cup of sugar is literally, it still exists. You go and say, hey, you have, or you cook something, you have extra, you just carry someone a plate, and it's not frowned upon. Whereas, unfortunately, you can live here in a condo, and for 15 years, and you never know your neighbor.
It's true.
And it shocks me that you could live next to someone, and apparently, and unfortunately, they could pass away next to you, and you wouldn't realize until the smell seeps out their front door. And that to me is where we need to really base our ideas on how can we bridge that gap and make sure that we can be a community going forward, and create those bonds to make sure the community is secure within itself. So when that, should we look forward and look out to say, okay, this is what we need, no one can come inside and break our links. So within that idea of community, what organizations have you seen to help to allow us to bridge those gaps, to get in help, creating that community, creating that safe space, creating that culturally affirming care, culturally appropriate care, for the families that you would come to have to
Support.
help out in the day-to-day basis.
Hmm. Um, I'd like to address one point that you made about strength. I have this idea about it. I have a lot on my plate. Anyone that knows me knows that I have a lot on my plate. And I always walk around with an idea that I know that I have a lot, but I know there's someone else that has more. But one time, a couple times, I've had people tell me that, or I've heard the narrative about the black woman
Mm,
being strong and having to carry, and you don't always have to be the strong one. So I want to make something clear from my understanding and my perspective. I think that God, I'm a conservative Muslim.
mhm,
I'll never apologize about that. And I believe in religion. That's me. That's my thing. Whatever's for you is for you, whatever your practice is, and I respect that. But for me, I understand strength as there's some people that God or the creator has brought on earth to lead and to be strong,
mhm,
right? I don't think that leadership should be, I don't think you should seek out leadership. That's my understanding. I think when somebody's a leader, it's anointed on them. It just happens.
mhm,
And I think the resilience and the strength and what we've seen of the black man and the black woman is very obvious. Of course, because of historical events that has damaged a lot of our excellence and our lineage. and have us in a really, really unfortunate situation today. But it's okay to be strong. It's okay to be strong. And I'm okay with accepting that I know that my creator gave me the appointment to have to lead in multiple areas within my home, some aspects of the community, because you got some sisters and brothers out there doing astronomical work, and that's for what they do.
mhm,
But I think I'd like to just make sure I dispel that it's okay to be strong,
mhm,
to accept it, embrace it. But within that, in order to stay strong and to be able to provide, you need to be able to fuel and drink clean water and
mhm,
put good gas and put good fuel. And that means good mental health, trying your best with your physical health. So that's one point. Because I always hear that, like, yo, you don't have to be the strong black women. No, we need black women to be strong. We are the mothers. We are the creators of life in and
the ma-
itself.
the matriarchal
Yes.
aspect within the Black community is
Yeah.
extremely important.
So
And
we
with
can't
that,
tell black women this. We need to uplift black women and say, hey, this is what you got. This is what it is.
mhm,
But how are we going to nurture and water her? And that's when another conversation for another podcast when we
mhm.
talk about how the brothers can help. But that's separate.
And I agree. I very much so agree. And within that strength, I just said you can be strong, but know that there is strength within seeking help as well.
Absolutely. So for me, where did I seek help? I never used to seek help. I used to want to do everything by myself. I used to wear the cape, invisible cape. Nobody could tell me nothing. I thought I knew. I pushed away anybody who was European looking, whatever you want to call Caucasian. I don't need them. And I was in this mindset when I was younger, and then in my 20s, and then I said, you know what? That approach ain't gonna work. Why? Because unfortunately, my community is not equipped or designed to be able to support me in the way I need to support myself.
Mhm,
You don't see me pointing any fingers. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm
mhm,
not doing that. Well, black people don't have nothing. No, no, black people have. We have some stuff. We have some stuff. But for it to reach the masses and the way it's supposed to reach society, it's very difficult for it to do that for whatever reasons. We don't have time in the podcast to go through it, but we accept it.
mhm,
Okay. And once I started bringing in certain individuals that cared, Professor Finch, that I met, who's a European background, who took me in. I was her student. She took me in. She said, "I want to be your friend. I like your vibe. I like. Can we?" And we started to work together. And she started to enlighten me. And then I started saying, "Okay, CAMH is there." I took my son there, and the people that were there, majority of them, some were from SAPACI, which is a substance abuse program for African and Caribbean youth. They all were black faced or Caribbean based, but everybody who ran it was European.
mhm,
Okay, we know that, right? Majority of the doctors, majority of the psychiatrists, the psychologists, the social workers. But these were the people who were sitting down at the table with me making ish happen.
mhm,
Huh? So once I realized that I actually need humankind to work with me to be able to get the resources I need, the help that I need, to get the bed that I need to literally support my loved one that's 10 and 12 years old and having an opioid crisis. And how do I move him from, or move that individual from the trap house or the alleyway this real life we're talking about real life stuff. We don't got time for that, but that's another podcast. But how do I do that? Bring them to the individuals and then sit there and want to sit up on my high horse and just say, yo, I only want to deal with black. Doesn't work that way.
mhm,
Doesn't work that way. So once I learned that and I humbled myself, I started getting the support I needed. CAMH was the home for me, and
mhm,
it's not somebody who's watching my say, oh yeah, because I saw that face on the campaign. I don't align myself with anything that I don't believe in. Anyone who knows me knows that, right? I pride myself on being a person that I'll back what I believe in myself personally. Uh, Once I seen that these people cared about changing the narrative for Black youth, Caribbean youth, I bought into it and I trusted our dear brother Kevin Haynes, who's a social worker now, the director of SAPACI, has multiple locations that he's running throughout Canada now, and he took us under his wings and he supported not just my son, myself, my family. I got like 3 or 4 kids now running through SAPAC, and they have a psychiatrist. They have a child developmental psychiatrist.
Hmm.
They're on the appropriate meds. They got the diagnoses that they need, whether it be depression, whether it be borderline personality disorder, whatever it is, whatever it is. Oh, that lady's up there talking. No, it's not talk. Whatever my business is your business, because the
Hmm.
same stuff's happening in your home, right? We can't hide this stuff anymore. So when I was able to go to these establishments and get the support that I needed, and I realized that the only how that I can dig myself somewhat out of this hole, mind you, we're going back again to my own accountability over there. So I gotta make sure I deal with that over there in my backyard. But then coupling it and partnering it with what resources that I was able to use, I
Hmm.
was able to get a bed, was able to get a psychiatrist. I was able to get person-centered care. People obviously that look like us understood, can have a conversation with them. Nobody was saying stuff like, "Excuse me, I don't understand what you mean." You can bust out your accent if you have your accent. You know what I mean? Like you could be yourself. You can speak the lingo. You can dress how you need to dress. Nobody's judging and saying, "Hey, let's have a conversation." First and foremost, what do you need? Who are you? And from somebody asks you, "Who are you?" or "How are you?" that can really go a long way. So Sapacy is a place that I champion. Obviously, CAMH is the broader, mother component of that, and that's where I have all my in-house services, even for like some loved ones who are older, who are in the senior category. They have a dementia department there. They have geriatrics. I go there for whatever needs that I literally need. And I feel like there's other organizations, of course, but for me personally, because of my life and how crazy it can get, I was able to get everything in house. So yeah, that's kind of like how I was able to. That's what I'm doing now, literally as we speak,
Hmm.
and it's going to be ongoing until my kids don't need those services anymore, or they leave at 18 or 20 or 21. And hopefully I had been a good role model and an example to show them how they can get resources, and then now I have my kids accessing these things on their own. So
Hmm.
again, it's me being informed. It's me being proactive. It's me understanding what my role is. I'm not worrying about nobody else, not business about nobody else and their role, taking care of my responsibilities, of my children, and then saying, hey, do you need help, Khadijah? Okay, you need help. You need support. Okay, you're going to go deal with your mental health or deal with your situation here. And then saying, okay, back to my kids, bring it together, get the resources, and dig hard and just really try to make the best. Because at the end of the day, when we're gone, we want to know that our kids are able to sustain, and not just financially, because that's a huge part of it.
Hmm.
But if they got money and they don't know what to do with it because their mentals aren't right, or they don't understand who they are as a person or as a people, then they'll really be able to do nothing for their generation, their future generations, or for their community.
Hmm. And no, my question would be coming off of that. No, you said you're within these spaces now to make that difference, right? By persons who necessarily don't look like us, but have a voice within that space. So now being there, being present, being able to shape exactly what can be catered to us specifically from your lens, because I always say we need to be in those rooms because the persons in the room sometimes they're so far removed from what is the reality. Some things may not translate to really helping us, although it may come with good intention and good faith, it is not really applicable to our day to day. Now, with you being within that space, could you then give me an idea, let's just say in the next 5 years of you being there, right? What would you like to be able to take away saying 5 years come and you're looking at the past you and you said this and you're looking at that day. And I know you said you like to live in the present and not in the future, but what would you like to achieve or to leave in that space if you have to step away from it from 5 years now and saying, you know what, I did my part, I did a good job. I know that what I've left here is going to be something that we can build upon and continue to build to help break those barriers and bridge those gaps within the inequitable health system that does exist today.
Mhm. Yeah, you know what, brother? I think about this often, and I'm back to a place where I've become selfish. I think far too many times, some of us give so much of ourselves to others, and then they forget about themselves. 5 years from now, my biggest challenge right now is the realm of autism, and the conversation about Black children particularly, I would say, okay, let's say equally black boys and girls, yes, but we understand that black boys in the public system, in any system that's disenfranchised, will have an astronomically more difficult time getting support and being a target in the future to law enforcement or to being incarcerated. Let's be plain about that. Um, the OAP, autism, the Ontario Autism Program that is jammed up and jacked up for the next 5 to 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
Where are our black families getting money to pay for these therapies? Again, that's another podcast
Mm-hmm.
where we can talk about what's happening in that spectrum. That's my passion right now because if I can't get my son functional
Mm-hmm.
as a black boy going
Mm-hmm.
into black manhood, adulthood, then I don't even know what to say. Right? The only thing I'll do is cry because if it's either cry or we laugh, and that's gonna make you cry. It's a dire and it's a desperate situation in relation to that. So that's my passion and my focus. Um, Another passion and focus I have is the political landscape. I don't think I have any particular influence on that. I know the American Pediatric Society, who I work with closely, they're making a lot of changes in relation to the incarcerated youth situation and adult situation in America, and we're working on those projects. Um, this May, the Canadian Pediatric Society has called me to talk about the situation again in relation to the incarcerated youth situation that's here. That's another podcast in itself, talking about the incarceration rate for youth here in within the GTA, which is an absolute travesty. Um, and then my other point of concern is Black women, Black girls, youth, and women, and where my voice can lend in the next 5 years, not just within my own backyard, because again, accountability starts from home, then it comes out into your community, and then it can expand internationally. How I can use my experience and my knowledge and understanding of life, and about how one should attempt to navigate, um, having a conversation with those women to get women to get up and take care of their postpartum health, to take care of their reproductive health. And this now we're getting into medicine, which is another podcast. How they can address their neurodiversities, because a lot of women we know have are now coming out with neurodiversities. So we know we know if European women are coming out, then we know that Black women are going to be even more so underdiagnosed and underrepresented in neurodiversity. And having a conversations about substance abuse, about relationships, and just getting up, going back, getting their education, and getting their mind right. This is where I see myself personally. Any other arena, only God knows where He'd place me. Again, like I said, leadership is something that I don't ask for. I think it just comes. If God wants you in that position or your creator wants you there, you're going to be there. And hopefully, I can build something within my own family, my own children, which my son and I and my daughter's she's a photographer. My son is a music producer. Um, I have a granddaughter actually who's
Congrats.
7 months old. She's turning seven
Congrats.
months. Her mother and I are very close, and we're working on projects on how can we take all these different avenues that I've allowed my children to create and find their own pathways, come together as a family to design and create generational wealth, because we need wealth in order to sustain in this society and to be able to sustain our generations. How can we do that and then use those resources to be able to build whatever it is that we feel that in the future our community will need? For me, OAP, the autism program, and that money not coming through, I'm just devastated. I lose sleep over it. So that's my passion, and just trying to talk to sisters and say, hey, how can we get up? How can we get up and get you back to where you need to be, wherever that is? So that's where I kind of see my trajectory. And I guess wish me luck, and I wish all the audience members luck as well.
And I'm looking forward, hopefully, in next 5 years, if we ever have an opportunity to have a discussion, we look back on all these things that you did preface, and we can say, you know what, you came, you saw, you conquered, and you have being refueled and be able to fuel your body to be able to keep on persevering and pushing forward. At this actually at this point, I want to invite the audience if they have any questions for Khadijah, to go ahead and please put it in the chat, and so we could also answer your questions as well. While we do wait for that, I like how you preface that is not just multifaceted in one area. It's not just substance abuse. It's not just mental health. It's within the whole concept of being human, right? Or day to day, and how we have to sit down and look at ourselves as a people and say, you know what, we need to realize within our community that first off, if you're gonna live in a glass house, you can't throw rock stone. That's what we say back home, right? So we need to make sure that our in-house and we are prepared to step up and then say, you know what, I've done my due diligence, right? No, I'm here to make sure that I get what is owed to me as a basic human right, and within that, there's such a broad ideology that has been placed amongst black people or persons from our community that is that we have to gatekeep, or we can't help each other, we can't push forward, or like if I give you a dollar, that means I'm a dollar less. But instead of saying it like, I help my brother to be on the same level as me, I help my sister to be on the same level as me, so no, she has a dollar more, so we could build a goal together. Now within that space, and I know that's where when it comes to resources, it's really really hard to navigate. How do you debunk that thinking when it comes to one, like if I help somebody, that's just going to impose on me? Because you speak about the autism and how that the funding between autism never came through, all right? But the more you give, more this is only a certain amount. Like, so how do you navigate saying, you know what, let's make sure that the resources are all there, and to let everyone know, like, don't gatekeep, because my problem may be this person's problem, maybe the other person's problem. There's enough to go around, and there should be enough to go around to help
Yeah,
us.
I don't really know how to answer that because to me, I have the philosophy like, if you're good, you're good. Let's go. If you're not good and you don't have good intentions, or you want to continue with crabs in the bucket type of syndrome, then I pick up that real quick and you can just keep moving and stay where you are. That's okay. I
Mhm,
think it's okay for us as a people to not trust everyone,
mhm,
even if it's your own, right? We have to have a certain level of intellect to say, hey, some people are just not good for us. And then there's some people that are good for us.
mhm,
And again, if you're spiritual and you're conscientious and you fear, you know,
mhm,
bad things happening to you, if you do bad things to other people, and if you do good, good comes around, I think you'll attract those sort of people. I have those people in my life. They're not all black. Many of them are, many of them aren't.
mhm,
But for me personally, it's either you're here to help and to move the progress forward. So, for example, I'm going to use a very, very real life example. Dr. Akeem Stewart, I met you here today.
mhm.
Khadijah Abdul-Gafoor is here. What happens between me and you after this conversation? Is it that we did a podcast? We enjoyed each other's company for the audience. We put on a little show for everybody. We said some truths. We said this. What happens between me and you after? Knowing that I'm in the medical realm because I have children who are sick, and then you see my background. I know your background. How are we going to work together? That's the type of networking that really, really needs to
That's the
happen,
importance,
because
yes.
you are the person above me that has more. You have more. You have more influence than me right now. I heard where you are, what you do. How can you support me? And then you might say, hey, that lady, for example, has some good skill sets in this area. How can I bring her to the table? And that's how it works.
Mhm,
That's how it really works. What conversation is Khadijah at the Guided Pen, that's my corporation,
mhm,
is going to have with this organization to continue to build? The problem is a lot of things stop, or when they are built and then something happens along the way. And I think that also has a lot to do with just the legacy of slavery, sadly. We just have these syndromes and things that we can't get rid of. But for me, I do away with it and I say, if you're good, you're good. If you're not good, stay the hell away from me, because I'm going to run you over, right? That's just how it is. If we're in a boxing match, I don't care who you are, I'm going to win because I have to win, because I'm accountable for people that I have in my home. If you want to come win with me, come, let's go. If you don't want to win, stay in your yard, stay where you are. and just do what you do. So I'm more concerned about what's going to happen now.
Hmm.
We can show the audience, okay,
Hmm.
what happens between Dr. Akeem Stewart and the guided pen, and then where are we going to take it from there? And I think this is something that our audience should be looking at. And it doesn't mean two professionals in the same field, or he's got a degree because we see doctor in front of your name, or that lady looks like she speaks well. She might have some level of intelligence and this and that. No, no, no. What are you doing? You know, in your community,
Hmm.
you two cousins coming together, two brother and sister coming together, two friends coming together. It doesn't matter where you're at. At the end of the day, we're all grinding and striving to get to the ultimate goal, and that's to say, you know what, when we're dead and gone and we're in our grave, we've left something behind, and we can be proud of that.
And I like that that warrior mindset as well, because you have to. I constantly believe that iron sharpen iron, so you have to align yourself with people that will help uplift you. All right. I would love to be able to tap into exactly what you asked me, but we do have a question from Jen. Her question is, Khadijah, what continues to motivate you to push for advocacy for individuals who don't advocate or seek out their own support?
I think being living proof. That's how I do it, Jennifer. I think that's how I do it. Being a living example. And when I do what I do, I have an obligation to teach my kids that. And I have an obligation that when you know better and you have something that's gold, or you have something that's a gem, to pass it on to someone else so they're able to do that. I think that's the only way our community, as in the Black community, is going to be able to do it. It's kind of going to be like a word of mouth kind of thing, man. Like if like a contagious thing. Like if I'm doing it, and then Dr. Stewart got some gems from me, and then he gave me some gems, then we pass it on to his niece, and I pass it on. I think that's the only way, because to be able to reach the community, I mean, obviously we have social media, obviously we have these platforms, but at the end of the day, a lot of people ain't tuning in, right? Once we're done, we're probably going to see, I don't know, 20 people, 15 people. Okay, then after maybe 70 people may have watched it. That's not a lot of people. But to get it out to the masses, it takes affluence. It takes somebody with money, or one of these organizations and these brothers and sisters to say, hey, or not even a brother or sister. It might be a non-Black person to say, hey, we like what those individuals are saying. We like what Dr. Stewart's saying. Hey, let's give these guys a bigger platform. Other than that, Jennifer, it's really trying to not be a hypocrite. It's really trying our very, very best to live by example. You say something, you do it. You borrow money from somebody, pay them back. You say you're going to show up, show up. You say you're going to do the podcast, and just really not try to be a fall down person or a fall down guy. That's really what it is at the end of the day. Accountability, accountability, accountability.
And I believe that is actually a brilliant lesson that we should end off on, the idea of accountability and making sure that we have it within our community to be able to strive to go forward. So, with that being said, Khadijah, thank you so much for being our guest today. It's been a pleasure to speak with you, and we will continue to speak to let the audience know that this wouldn't be the last time that we will have an interaction moving forward, to make sure that my influence in the space that I am in, and also your influence in the space you're in, that we could come together to be able to do great work. I wish you a wonderful day, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you
Thank
everyone
you.
for joining in, and you have a wonderful day.
Okay, we are no longer live. That was amazing. So amazing. It's echoing.
Sorry, I honestly didn't